Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be finally talking about the Magnolia Parks universe books by Jessa Hastings. So I promised I would do a whole review video on these books when I read them, so let's just get right into them. So I definitely picked these books up because they were so popular on TikTok and I was seeing every YouTuber reading them, and the covers, to me, threw me off a little bit because they don't look like romance books at all. And honestly, they're definitely not something I would have picked up if I hadn't seen so many romance readers reading them. But they just kept catching my eye, and I thought I would just check them out, see if they were worth the hype, if I ended up loving them. I'm usually someone who does enjoy a good toxic romance. The books that actually got me into romance were the After series, so I feel like I'm very familiar with the toxic relationship books, and so I was excited to give these ones a shot. I was very open to, what they were going to have to offer, but I will say I did not end up loving them, and I'm going to get a little bit into why and sort of what I thought about the books, what I didn't like about them, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to start with Magnolia Parks, which is obviously the first book in the series. This one, when I read, I gave it 3 stars. I wrote in my review when I read it that I really couldn't decide if I loved or hated this book because I did enjoy sort of the fact that you knew that these two were meant to be together and they sort of keep getting close but not quite there. If you don't know anything about these books, I am going to keep this probably spoiler free for the most part. So there may be some little minor spoilers, but nothing. I feel like there aren't even really any spoilers you could say about these books because they just are what they are. And this first one follows Magnolia and BJ, who have been best friends forever. They dated for a while and then he did something that, caused them to break up. And now he is hooking up with all these other girls, and she is sort of, in retaliation to that, she is getting all of these boyfriends. She keeps dating all these guys, trying to find one that's going to stick. And the book sort of follows that relationship where, they sort of get together and then he sleeps with someone and then she's dating someone, and it's just a constant cycle of that happening throughout the entirety of this book. And I was okay with that in this first book because I was like, okay, it's a love triangle, I guess, sort of thing going on, and they're gonna end up with each other, that they're endgame, but at the same time you're watching them do all these stupid things to try and hurt the other. And that part, I was okay with. Plot-wise, this book I was okay with. Wasn't super obsessed with it by any means or anything, but I thought it was okay. It was the writing, I think, that really did not work for me in this one. One of the things I really, really hated in these was how they're written. The author just writes things so weirdly. I put this in my reviews, both of them, for Daisy Hates and Magnolia Parks. The author doesn't like to use the word I at the beginning of a sentence. It's very, very strange. I've never read anyone who writes like that. Instead of saying, I ran down the street and met my friends at the bar, it literally just says ran down the street, met my friends at the bar. And I just I don't know, I didn't like how that was going into my brain, I guess. I felt like I was reading it and every time I felt like I was missing a word, I was like, wait, did I miss something? And I was constantly rereading these sentences that just straight up were missing words for no reason. And I didn't like that at all. I also really, really hated that she would put these text chains at the end of a chapter, and there was pretty much zero way of figuring out who these text chains were between unless there was some sort of context in the message that you could go, okay, that would be this person saying this, because it would show you a name at the top of the text chain, but it didn't tell you who was texting who. So you knew that one of the people was the name on the top, but that was all you knew. And you would think by general logic that the text chain would be in the perspective of the person that the chapter was in, but it wasn't always, because sometimes that just didn't make any sense. And I just hated why even put that in there if you're not gonna make it clear who's texting who. And I really, really hated that. Couldn't stand that. Also in this one, what I think really, really set me over the edge for just not vibing with the writing was there was paragraph long descriptions of what every single person was wearing in this book. And that's not an exaggeration. It got to the point where I was skipping the first 2 paragraphs of every chapter that was in Magnolia's perspective, because all it was her listing every single brand, color, style, cut, whatever, of what every single person was wearing, and I couldn't care less. Like, literally could not care less. And that was driving me insane, and that was sort of the reason that I actually decided to pick up the second one, was I was like, okay, Magnolia is not one of the characters that we're getting her perspective in Daisy Hates, so I was like, maybe we won't be getting these long outfit descriptions, you know, it won't matter as much because it's a different character. And so that was what actually led me to decide, like, okay, I will pick up the next book because it won't have this problem that I was having in the first book. Another problem I had, and this was recurring throughout the books, was the number of nicknames in this series was just excessive and unnecessary. I had a very, very hard time keeping the side characters straight in these books because they constantly just like, they're like, okay, this is this person's first and last name, and they would throw it all together in like one list, like, oh, this is this person, this person, this person, and this person, they do this, and like this person, this person, this person do that. And it'd be like, you know, 7 characters introduced all at once, and I was just like totally lost. And then they would call them by nicknames later, so like even if I tried to remember like their first names, it was like later on they were calling them by their last names, or they were calling them some random nickname, and I honestly just gave up trying to figure out who was who because I couldn't keep any of it straight. Even like the main guy in the book, his name is Baxter James, I think, which is obviously shortened to BJ, but then they also just call him Beej. And I was like, you already shortened it to 2 letters, why did you need to shorten it again to something else? And that was every single character in these books. It drove me nuts. And I will get more into that when I talk about Daisy Hates, because that was like a whole other level of this. But that was like my main issues with the first book, and like I said, I was on board with the plotline. Like, I think I could have kept going if the writing had been better. I would have, you know, probably rated it higher than I did, but I gave it 3 stars because I thought the story was good, but I just wasn't vibing with the writing at all. And so, like I said, I did give the second book a shot. So I picked up Daisy Hates thinking, okay, Magnolia Parks is not going to be one of the main characters. I don't have to worry about her clothing spiels and like, you know, all this stuff that I wasn't vibing with. And I was like, maybe, you know what, I believe Magnolia Parks is a debut novel, so I was like, maybe the author figured out, you know, that some of these things maybe weren't working for some people and has changed how she wrote the second book. I wasn't wrong in that assumption. She did change how she wrote the second book, but it was actually significantly worse, which was not great for me. I'm gonna be like really, really transparent here for a second and say the only reason I did not DNF this book is because I had already filmed my video of everything I DNF'd this year, and I didn't want to have to film another clip to edit into it afterwards. That is the only reason that I forced myself to finish this book, because it was truly, truly torturous trying to get through this book. Like I said, I was okay with like the plot line in the first book, but I found that this book was an exact replica of the first book. It is the same story pretty much, except with the characters having different names. Like, it's another, you know, love triangle thing going on. This one was even more ridiculous to me because both of the characters are in love triangles, and I feel like that just doesn't work. Like, you need to have one character that's in a love triangle, not both. And on top of that, this book obviously follows Daisy, and you're supposed to be rooting for her and Christian getting together, but there are actually 4 love interests that she has over the course of this book. Like, 4 guys that are into her, and she doesn't exactly not reciprocate the feelings to all of them. Like, she sort of leads them all on. Like, she just doesn't care. And I just found that really annoying because I was like, she was with, you know, these 3 other guys, and he had another girl that he was into, and it's just like, for me, I was like, why am I even rooting for them to be together when they don't really want to be together, you know? And I felt like because of that, I just lost total interest in the story. This book was also really, really weird. It had Julian's perspective in it, which is Daisy's brother, which was so, so random to me. Like, I don't know why that was even in there. I will say I enjoyed his chapters the most, but I think it was literally just because I could not stand Daisy and Christian. But I didn't get why that was in there. I didn't feel like it was necessary. Like I said, this is very, very similar to the first book in that it's literally just a love triangle between people that just keeps getting messier. No one ends up together. It's just one big disaster, really. And again, with the writing with this one, like I said, it actually got worse. The nicknames in this one were back. Couldn't keep anything straight. To me, a character with a name like Daisy, the only nickname that should be happening is like either like a cute coupley like nickname or whatever, like that the boyfriend calls her or something, or if it's like a literal nickname for her name, then it should have been Days. Like that would have been the only acceptable thing to me. But they call her Face. Tell me how I was supposed to make that connection. It literally goes from them calling her Daisy to there's like one time where someone calls her Daisy Face, and then after that people just start calling her Face. And at first when I saw like Face written in the book, I was like, who the heck is that? Like where did that come from? And that to me was when I just started getting like, okay, this is getting ridiculous. Like why does every single character have to have 4 different names? Like it was just excessive. It really, really was. And every character was like that. They had their first name, their last name, their nicknames, their, you know, things that this person called them or things that person called them. And it just made it so hard for me to keep track of everyone. Even like there's a guy named Henry, I think, and they call him Hen all the time, which like, yeah, that makes sense. But why do we have to shorten that? Like it just really started to irritate me in this book. And what really, really killed me in this book was the footnotes. My God, I have never, ever, ever seen a romance book. I'm using that term very loosely because I genuinely would not even consider these romances. I've never seen a book with this many footnotes. There were literally hundreds of footnotes in this book. And I read like maybe the first 10. And after that I was like, you know what, this is ridiculous. Like you have to flip the pages. Like I was reading an ebook. I had to flip the pages every single time. And I was like, you know what? Sometimes they were just like stupid things. Like she would be saying something and then the footnote was her just being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he did that. And I was like, why am I flipping the page to read this? Like it was so irritating and it made reading the book so irritating. Like I said, after the first 10, I just stopped reading them and sort of adopted the mentality of like, if it wasn't important enough for the author to write it on the page that I'm reading, then it's not important enough for me to read. I skipped all the footnotes after that. Because it was just, like, why? Like, why was that necessary? I don't know. That was literally the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen a book do in my entire life. It was so, so stupid, annoying to read, and just made an already unpleasant reading experience even worse because it was not only not the best book, but it was also irritating to read, which I feel like is never a good sign. This one did the same thing with the text chains where it didn't tell you who was texting who. You were just supposed to somehow magically figure it out. And in this book also, it threw in some text chains that didn't even have a name on them. There was just a number. And I don't know that we ever even find out who that is because I don't remember finding out who that was. But I don't know. I was just so bored, honestly, after this one. I gave this 1.5 stars, and I said this in my review, I'm pretty sure, but like I've never given a book 1.5 stars before. But to me, 2 stars seemed generous. And 1 star is usually reserved for books that I find are actually like offensive or have something like seriously wrong with them. And this one didn't have anything that was necessarily problematic about it, but it just was so boring. And like these books are not short either. They're both over 500 pages, I'm pretty sure. And so it's like 1,000 pages of book that I have read. And I feel like I got absolutely nowhere. Like nothing has happened plot-wise. Both books circled back right to be right where they started. And I just, like, I don't know. I don't see the appeal with these ones at all. I think this is another case of book talk, just, like, taking something and running with it because, I don't know. I didn't even get to the 3rd book, which is kind of sad because that was actually my favorite cover. And I was totally willing to buy it if I loved it. But I just, honestly, I can't bring myself to read another one of these books. I genuinely don't think I would even pick up anything from this author again just because I absolutely cannot stand the way the books are written. And so like I tried, but like these ones definitely are gonna go in the category of like hyped books that I did not love because I don't know. I don't want to read about people who don't even want to be together. And that's to me what these books were. Like Magnolia and BJ, I could see like, yeah, they wanted to be together like deep down. But Daisy and Christian, like I feel like they genuinely like could have been with any one of their like love triangles or squares or whatever you want to call it. But it just, like, to me, I wasn't rooting for them. And so to me, I'm like, what's the point in even reading that if I don't care who gets with who because they don't even seem to care themselves. And so anyway, those are my thoughts on those books. Like I said, probably won't be reading from the author again. But other than that, that is everything for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. I'm currently doing new book videos every single day, and I will see you next time.